Joining us now is Ojy Okpe with stories trending around the world. Hello, Ojy.
Good morning, Dr. Abati. How are you?
Good.
Great. Good morning, Tundu. I love your dress.
Thank you, darling. I love yours too.
Good morning, Rufai. How are you? He's taking over. I'm sorry, Dr. Abati. You have to compete now. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Great. Well,
you're looking radiant.
Thank you. Good morning to you, viewers. We begin what's trending in Nigeria. The Minister of Works and Housing, Babatunde Raji Fashola, has reacted to a letter by Sam Ojy Okpe, the CEO of Executive Jets, which explained the circumstances surrounding a controversial flight that conveyed musician Naira Marley to Abuja from Lagos for a concert in violation of COVID-19 guidelines. The letter, which was written to the Minister of Aviation, Hadi Sarika, stated that the company thought that Babatunde Fashola wanted to use the flight as his name appeared on the manifest, not knowing that it was a bunch of useless people. In response, the Special Advisor on Communications for the Minister of Works and Housing said Mr. Fashola had not made any non-compliant flight out of Abuja since March 22nd and has adhered strictly to the federal government's ban on interstate travels. Naira Marley, on the other hand, hit back at Executive Jets for branding him and other members of his team as a bunch of useless people. Taking to Twitter, he wrote, "Do you know that over 20,000 Malians travel with Executive Jet a month? We won't be using your useless airline again for calling us useless. Thank God we didn't crash on that flight because we nearly did. By the way, we didn't book the flight ourselves." Hey, this has been trending. Meanwhile, the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Mohammed Musa Bello, has described the concert as reckless, wicked, insensitive, utter disrespect and disregard both for the law, well-being and welfare of fellow citizens. The minister, who reacted angrily to what he called the illegal music concert, said several aspects of the guidelines, as postulated by the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, as well as the FCT administration, were violated with reckless abandon. However, a video from Naira Marley's social media showed the musician asking the crowd to observe social distancing. Let's take a quick look at that.
Please go back to your cars, please. You understand? Please go back to your cars. Thank you so much. The performance continues, but go back to your cars and make videos from your cars.
Okay.
Well, thank you for that video of Naira Marley trying to enforce the social distancing. I think that is a ball that was dropped by the concert organizers. They should have ensured that people stayed in their cars. Now, whether or not we should even be having that kind of outdoor concert in your car or not is a different question. And I think the answer to that is that no, we shouldn't. Because in the FCT, it's a gathering of 20 people maximum. That is the current restriction that we have. So trying to work around and find a lacuna in which to introduce this kind of concert in cars, where people invariably will not stay in their cars, they will come out of their cars, is irresponsible of the organizers.
Why is it that it would work everywhere else in the world? In Brazil, they just observed Valentine's Day, and they did a nice drive-in concert, and what
we're not in Brazil. But if I may finish,
yes.
I think that the tone of defiance on Twitter from Naira Marley is misplaced at this point. The fact of the matter is, rather than, defiance, I think what he should just do is issue an apology for flouting the social distancing rules and putting himself and his fans at risk of a life-threatening virus. People make mistakes. It's okay to accept that. I don't understand that kind of, repost. It's unnecessary.
One, I think, let me start with the apology that was offered by Sam Ojy Okpe, who is the chairman of Executive Jets, because there's been a lot of discussion around that letter that he wrote to the minister. And now you have Minister Babatunde Fashola's reaction. Now, from the letter that the chairman of Executive Jets wrote, he pointed out that he was informed that, on June 13, that there was a request for the use of the aircraft. The judge that was supposed to be taken to Abuja had already gone to Abuja, and then he requested for the manifest, and the manifest was sent to him. Then he saw Fashola Babatunde on the manifest. Now, the innocent presumption would be to assume that, it's the minister. And I think in that regard, we don't need to take him to task. So he said, well, he thought it was the minister going to Abuja, and he then, on the basis of that, gave the approval, only for him to now realize later that it wasn't actually the minister. So on that basis alone, I think the Minister of Aviation could reach the logical conclusion that it was an innocent mistake that was made, and therefore forgive executive jet that had now been suspended, we're told. Now, there was also a reference in Sam Nwajoku's letter to useless people, and that's what Naira Marley is referring to. Now, I mean, nobody will say that Naira Marley is a useless person in terms of his art, in terms of his music, in terms of the success that he's been able to achieve with some of his albums, yes. The Oshiomhole one, the Soapy one, that is almost an anthem among young people. However, he and his team that went to that concert can be dismissed as useless on the grounds of the fact that they violated the guidelines and put people's lives at risk. Valid. Because the Minister of Aviation himself has had to remind everyone of what the guidelines are. Yes. And then the violation also of interstate travel. Now, no distinction is made between people who can travel interstate. Going from Lagos to the Federal Capital Territory, that's a useless way to behave. Okay, so that is that. And I think that the minister himself, Babatunde Fashola, should just overlook the matter as one of those things. He is Babatunde Raji Fashola. Now, Naira Marley says he has a brother who is also Babatunde Fashola, while he is additional. That's Naira Marley himself, Aziz Fashola. So I don't think that, former Governor Babatunde Fashola should take offense. He himself, as a lawyer, will understand that, mistakes like this cannot come.
I disagree with the language useless being used. I'd love your reaction. Rufai, please. All
right, my quick reaction is this. At first, I'll go back to the organizers of that concert in Abuja. What appropriate clearance did they get? Why I ask this is because in Lagos, precisely Lekki, precisely Bay Lounge, they had the same concert where you drive your car in, you sit in, and it was successful. In fact, they had Lagos State authorities there to ensure that there was social distancing. Cars were parked. They enjoyed the music. They had the same musician on stage. I forget him now. In fact, we took the report of that concert on Arise TV. Sheito covered that.
Yeah. It wasn't Naira Marley.
It wasn't Naira Marley.
That's what I'm saying. So that's the difference.
You get.
But that's the difference.
And that's why we should ask the organizers, what the permission they got, how they enforce this. And let's not forget, the same Naira Marley has an antecedent. We forget the Funke Akindele's party.
We don't. I didn't forget it.
I mean, the Jennifer's party, where he violated the law, but he was pardoned by the court. Now Naira Marley is finding himself in all of this. Naira Marley is not a useless person based on his achievements and the likes. But please, he should stop getting into useless controversies. because he keeps getting into very useless controversies, and he's getting one too many. And I'm even shocked that nobody is talking about Naira Marley here. He breached the law. Are there not supposed to be punitive measures for Naira Marley in all of this? Is he not supposed to be arrested and charged? You lawyers, I know Dr. Abati, you're a lawyer, Tunde, you're a lawyer. Please enlighten me more on this.
I'm with you on this. My pet peeve is double standards. I don't see why Funke Akindele was arrested and charged, and he's on Twitter being defensive. That is just not the attitude to take. It is law and order, and he breached law and order.
That's correct.
And you made a reference to the other concert. It depends on the artist, it depends on their persona, the kind of fans that they have. Some fans, I don't want to give examples, of certain artists will sit in their cars, like, mature law-abiding citizens, and other fans are a little bit more rowdy.
So are you saying Malians are rowdy? Are you saying Malians are useless people?
You just heard me, Rufai.
I know, I was just joking.
Being a Malian has become some form of a counterculture. But look, don't let us gloss over it. The organizers of the concert misbehaved, and it's just as well that government has shut down that mall that was used by the organizers. And I think that the organizers should also be sanctioned. Yes. And you are absolutely right. Naira Marley, should pay more attention to his brand, Because threatening the airline and saying, oh, there are how many Malians that they will boycott executive jets.
Concerning that Naira Marley is lying, I don't believe 20,000 Malians. He should bring out the manifest.
But in any case, executive jets can do without his 20,000 crowd.
No, clearly, that's just the wrong approach. That's the wrong tone.
Like you said, I agree with you. It's a matter of law and order. I think that for sure, they flouted every guideline that has been put in place to prevent COVID-19, and, you know, this matter should be taken very seriously. Let's take another story. Users on social media have reacted to the recent development rocking the Edo State All Progressive Congress after the governor of the state, Godwin Obaseki, formally resigned his membership to the party on Tuesday and announced that he would pursue his ambition for a second term in office on another platform. More reactions surfaced that same day when a three-man panel of the Court of Appeal affirmed the suspension of the party's national chairman, Oshiomhole. Well, let's take some reactions. One user wrote, last week, Oshiomhole engineered the disqualification of Obaseki from the Edo State APC primary election. Today, the Court of Appeal upholds Oshiomhole's suspension as APC chairman. This Game of Thrones is really interesting. An account for the governor of Rivers State, Nyesom Wike, wrote, I have agreed to help Obaseki teach Oshiomhole a lesson in Edo State. Oshiomhole should go and ask Amechi how far. This was a huge reaction, everyone. It was circulating all over social media. Finally, a user wrote, so if Obaseki joins the PDP, the Edo State election will be between Obaseki PDP versus Ize-Iyamu APC. Just 4 years ago, the election between Obaseki APC versus Ize-Iyamu PDP. The clowns who praised one and insulted the other will now do a 180. Nigeria.
This is complete fact, yes.
Well, you know, I guess this is the summary of politics and democracy in Nigeria. I mean, you can't, it's really about, you know, the national ideology and the political ideology. People don't stick to that. I mean, it doesn't exist right now in Nigeria. So the problem now is really not about the political parties. It's really about the individuals, you know.
Well, I think the melodrama.
Yeah.
We should all be concerned about it so that we don't move from melodrama to tragedy. And in that regard, I always make the point that these gladiators, on both sides, they're going for broke.
Yeah.
It's like, look, we'll fight it to finish. They should spare a thought for the people of Edo State.
Yes.
Because in all of this conversation, I've not heard the politicians themselves talking about the people.
Not once.
And then Wike is saying that he will come to Edo State and help. Well, I hope he's aware that he cannot do interstate travel at this time, and that will amount to meddlesomeness. And what kind of intervention? Is he going to bring some enforcers from River State to come and get involved in the election in Edo State? Right. So politicians should also be careful what they say so that they don't inflame passions further.
Absolutely.
But let's take a short break. When we return, we'll continue with Ojy Okpe and what's trending. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. What's trending with Ojy Okpe continues. Ojy?
Thank you, Dr.
You still want to take comments on the last story? Or?
I think we're good with that. Okay. Let's take another story in Katsina State, where some young men and women on Tuesday took to the streets to protest the incessant attacks and killings of residents by bandits. The young crowd, under the aegis of coalition of northern groups, lamented the frequent attacks by bandits while chanting anti-government songs. The group called for immediate action to end the killings in the state and demanded the resignation of the governor of the state, Aminu Masari. The protest comes a week after a billboard bearing the picture of President Muhammadu Buhari was burnt by protesters in Yantumaki town, Dansuma local government area of the state. Shortly after that protest, more than 40 residents were killed by bandits. I mean, it's great that they're coming out to protest. I mean, I believe over the weekend, the governor had said that, he had failed his people and was really apologetic about it. And, the fact that they pulled out of that peace agreement with the bandit, I think really caused more uprising in the state, which I don't think that they should have ever gone into a peace deal in the first place. You don't go into a peace deal with bandits at all.
Absolutely not. And then go and be taking that awful photo that we all saw with the bandit brandishing an AK-47 right next to the governor. I mean, who was really in control and who had the upper hand, frankly? And kudos to the people of Katsina for defending their right to life. Yes. It's a fundamental human right. And doing so peacefully. I completely applaud this protest because they're essentially sitting ducks. Their governor has admitted that he does not have any solution for them. And I agree with them. They have the right to sleep peacefully in their beds. It's ridiculous.
Absolutely.
Well, I think, yes, I agree. The protest is perfectly in order. And it's good that the protest was also peaceful. This was organized by a coalition of northern youths, as they call themselves. And it's not just in Katsina that you have insecurity, banditry. It's across the entire north.
Yes.
And it's good to see not just the ordinary people of the north, but also the elite, the northern elite, also speaking up and asking that, government should protect the people. There's an interesting piece written by Professor Usman Yusuf. He used to be in charge of the National Health Insurance Scheme, in which he titled, "Silence in the Face of Evil is Evil." And he made a point that once upon a time in this country, northerners heard of violence or armed robbery in the southern part of the country. And now, all of a sudden, the Arewa territory of Nigeria, which used to be very peaceful, has become the hotbed of violence. And he's saying, look, government response is inadequate. And that's a professor, he's from the north. Not too long ago also, Professor Ango Abdullahi of the Northern Elders Forum also expressed concern about the wave of insecurity in the northern part of Nigeria, with the ironic fact that the president, the incumbent president, is even from that part of the country. And in this particular video you have shown, the protest is in his own state. And this is, just one in a series of protests that we have seen since the governor of Katsina State said, look, we're no longer respecting any deal with the bandits. So this should be a wake-up call for government at both the state level and the federal government level. And not for government, and I hope government will not turn around and dismiss these protesters as mere irritants, which was the phrase that my friend and brother Femi Adesina used to dismiss Professor Ango Abdullahi. We have a serious problem of insecurity that needs to be addressed.
But the concern by the federal government is that these protests were going to disrupt the security that has been enforced in the state. I mean, I don't know how that would disrupt them in the first place. Rufai, I'd like your comment with that.
I mean, you're very spot on, Dr. Abati and Tundu. This is needed because the north is on fire. We can't run away from that. And it's shocking that we're calling genuine national calls for security, people that are making these calls as irritants. It's quite very shocking. But I'm not surprised again. And I will go back to what Charles de Gaulle said. Charles de Gaulle said politicians will promise they will build bridges where there are no rivers. These same politicians promised us that there's going to be security in the north, that banditry will be a thing of the past, but it's obvious that these are just promises. And we should all come out and speak against this, and even protest in our own little way. I think it was Dante in his Divine Comedy piece that said there's a special place in hellfire for those that see evil and don't speak up about it. This is evil. This is carnage. People have died in Katsina. All lives matter.
Very well said, Rufai. Still in Nigeria, the Academic Staff Union of Universities has declared that the nation's tertiary institutions are not prepared for virtual learning, attributing it to poor infrastructure, inadequate funding, and lack of requisite skills. According to the union, online teaching required some special pedagogical skills and training of lecturers, which takes time. In an interview, the president of the union, Professor Biodun Ogunyemi, said there is no Nigerian university that operates any form or model of e-learning because of poor internet access, high bandwidth costs, and irregular power supply. Let's take some Twitter reactions. One user wrote, "This is true. Based on the current infrastructure level of training and exposure of most academics and current processes in our federal and state universities, ASU is 100% right, but we need solutions. How can we move forward?" Another user, Tunde Arogumati, wrote, "Hopefully, quite soon, in Nigeria, we will begin to realize the need to engage the services of competent people who are able to make desired outcomes and deliverables possible instead of endless counterproductive rocket science propagating bench warmers." Finally, in response, a user wrote, "Begs the question of where the competence comes from. The quality of education determines the quality of workforce. It is a terrible cycle we are in that can only be broken with disruption in terms of large and measurable investments." And I think that this tweet is spot on. We do need complete, an overhaul of the tertiary institution in regards to e-learning. I mean, I stand with the ASU president saying that, it is impossible to have this type of education system in the universities at this point.
But isn't it just dreadful? I mean, I raised that with our last guest. If this is the case, what kind of graduates are we producing? They will be completely uncompetitive. It's actually such a damning statement that he made.
I'm glad that he's raised this alarm because I have not even thought about it in the first place.
It's awful.
Yes, it is.
Well, it's a very serious challenge. I mean, a country is able to compete depending on the quality and the skill set of the people that it processes through its education system. Professor Jibril, who was our guest this morning, he pointed out that, well, in spite of this situation that we have in Nigeria, when Nigerian graduates go abroad, they are able to compete. Well, they are not competitive abroad. They are because they were well trained at home. They are competing because they are able to adjust to the new system in which they have found themselves. So the question is, what is the way forward? It's not just the universities that cannot do e-learning. Many of our public schools cannot do e-learning. There's a challenge of data, as you pointed out, the challenge of electricity, the challenge also of the kind of exposure that the teachers have had. The standard method of teaching in Nigeria is face-to-face interaction. The universities, well, face-to-face, and then the use of handouts. And many of our teachers do not go out of their own way, to self-develop, which is also part of the challenge that we face. So it's part of the conversation around how to strengthen the education system. How many teachers, for example, can afford to buy a laptop and maintain it? Now, we have had some state governments saying that they are giving out laptops to schools. If you go and check, you will see that that was just an opportunity in many of those states to award contracts. Okay, so these are the problems. It's about the management of the system, the governance, framework that we have in Nigeria, and then very serious ethical issues about the kind of attitude that our political leaders have towards the education sector.
Okay. I know, Rufai, you have a comment.
I have a quick comment as regards that. Dr. Abati, you asked, what's the way forward? I'll tell you this straight and quick. The way forward is endowments. Look at all the big universities that can afford to build a lot of infrastructure around the world. They have an endowment system. The endowment system is currently working in the Lagos Business School. Most of the funding is endowments, and there's a contributory funding through the tuition fees. I'll give you an instance. St. John's College in Oxford has an endowment fee worth over $500 million. I bet you the entire £500 million. I bet you the entire amount we spend on universities in Nigeria, I'm sure, is not worth over £500 million. Endowment is the way forward. We need to have a collaborative effort where we can set up endowment funds vis-a-vis tuition, vis-a-vis government support, because endowment can bridge the gap. The biggest universities in the world are not funded by government. Government doesn't have the money to do it. That's why you need a robust endowment induced with a robust alumni system to be able to make skilled learning. Well, Harvard is largely funded by endowments.
Well, within our university system, we have some of our universities that have received endowments from generous Nigerians. But the ancillary question is, always the management of the fund. And you know, of course, that's part of the challenge that we face in Nigeria, not just in the education sector, but everywhere.
Right, well, thank you guys.
Well, thank you very much, Ojy.
All right, see you
we
tomorrow.
Look forward to seeing you again tomorrow.
Absolutely.